Hello and welcome everyone to the very first episode of the UCC Law Society's Solicitor series. This series is essentially an opportunity to get an insight into the various different opportunities that a legal degree can offer you in the various different fields, and also the opportunities that are there on our doorstep within Cork. We're going to be interviewing various different solicitors and those within the legal field around Cork and in various different practices, and stay tuned to hear more about that. The very first episode here we have Dermot Kelleher joining me to talk about criminal law. But firstly, I'd like to thank the Southern Law Association for sponsoring this series. It's going to be a three-part series that you can find on our YouTube and also on our Spotify. So as I mentioned, stay tuned, and without further ado, I will welcome Dermot. I hope you're doing well. So do you want to just give maybe a short introduction to who you are and how you've ended up where you are today?
Yeah, sure. Listen, thanks very much, Bailey, for inviting me here today. It's a pleasure to be back here in UCC, and it's a pleasure to talk about what I do. My name is Dermot Kelleher. I'm a solicitor that practices just in criminal defence here in Cork, and I've been doing it for 27 years now, exclusively in criminal law. How I started off was, I suppose, like a lot of people that go into law, I was always interested in advocacy. I was always interested in court. I was always interested in kind of, I suppose, fairness as well. And so I didn't really know how to go about getting into it. I knew you could do a law degree, but I wasn't very sure after that because nobody before me in my family, or I didn't know anybody that was in the law. So I found out you start off with a law degree basically. So I did my law degree here in UCC, and then we went to Blackhall. We were actually the first year I was there, first year where they did what's called the new Blackhall system. Now we were class 1. Can't imagine what class you were, but we were class 1 when we went there, and I was apprenticed to a family solicitor that was down in the country, and there was very little going on there, and you really didn't have to get apprenticed or join in until you did your degree, finished your degree, and so it gave me time to find out, about how to go about this. But cut a long story short, I was in Blackhall. We were all in Blackhall, and one of the professors there said he was going to call to our practices and during the year to see how we were doing after we had left Blackhall, after the first part of Blackhall. So he called to me down the country town where I was, and he pretty much said to me, "Is this really what you want to be doing?" And I said, "Well, no." He said, "What do you really want to do?" I said, "Well, I really want to do criminal law." And he said, "Well, as it happened, one of the lecturers on our course, the criminal law lecturers, are Garrett Sheehan and company, and it's Garrett Sheehan." And he said, "And they've been on to me saying that they want, they're looking for somebody to become an apprentice." So he set me up with an interview with them straight away, and they just said, when do you want to start? So that was an office in Dublin then, that just did criminal law. Yeah. But when I was finishing Blackhall, I wanted to come back to Cork, so it wasn't really viable to do it in Cork. We didn't have the same population, but in 1994, basically, there was an increase in the legal aid fees, and in criminal law, if you're doing criminal law, it's legal aid, that pays your way, because 99.9% of people are criminal, that are before the criminal courts are funded through legal aid. So we got an increase in the fee, and then it became viable to do it. So I started doing it in 1994, and that's what I've been doing since. And I have to say, it's still great, and it's very enjoyable. When you're doing something that you really like doing. Yeah. And if I was to recommend anything to anybody, I'd say, you got to do something that you like doing, that you like getting up in the morning for. If you don't, then switch to some other area. There's other areas of practice in law, but criminal law for me, I have to say, as I was saying to you earlier, I mean, like it was a very interesting subject in college, criminal law and law of evidence, but actually doing it in practice is way better. Yeah. And when you start off, again, our system is I know it's a fairly antiquated system, with apprentices, and then when we attend counsel, barristers and cases. So like we would do district court ourselves, we would do district court appeals ourselves, but when we get to circuit court on indictment charges, the criminal legal aid scheme funds for one counsel, and if they're more serious cases like murder or rape, then you get two counsel, which would be a junior and a senior. Now, the advantage of that system, especially when you're starting off, or especially when you're an apprentice, like I was in Dublin, you learn an awful lot. You learn it while it's actually happening. You learn from counsel, especially, and I have to say, it's a magnificent way to learn, because you already have done the academic, but to actually then get it in practice and see how it's done. So it brings you along, you know, because it would be pretty difficult if you were thrown in deep end first day and had to defend somebody in serious charge, because people's livelihoods, you know, and people's, you know, potentially going to prison on your watch, you know. So it's better that you kind of get gradually into this and learn from people who know a lot more than you know.
Yeah,
and we all learn, and pretty much we still learn every day. We still learn, you know.
And if you were a student now, say, who found criminal law or law of evidence very interesting and thought that maybe that's something they'd love to do, what kind of advice would you give them? Just throw themselves into it, go out there, maybe shadow someone like yourself, get some experience,
Absolutely. The shadowing wasn't available when I was there. You know, we've moved on a lot, you know.
Yeah.
And so we have people shadowing with us all the time, as I was saying. We have people from transition year in school. We have people who are college students. We have people who are graduates, you know. And you know, we now pretty much have them all year round. And it's no difficulty for us. We just get them to trail us, basically. We try and get them into, you know, as many areas as we can, you know, and we try and get them into as many different kind of court scenes as we can, you know, and so you got to do that first. So and there's no problem doing that. Anybody will allow you to go in. Sure, it's no load to us. You know, we're only too delighted to have people in. So yeah, start by that and then see what you think of it, and then probably though, because of the greater population, if you were really going to try and get into a criminal law, you'd probably have to try and start in Dublin, you know, first, where there'd probably be more openings and, you know, obviously greater amount of work for criminal lawyers, you know. Yeah,
but it's definitely still the opportunities in Cork anyway, like yourselves and stuff.
There are, but they would be greater opportunities, I would think, to start off. No, then you can start off, get the experience and come back.
Yeah, oh, that's great.
And once you've got a few years' experience, you know, try and pick up a job back here then, and then you can always think about branching out on your own. As you know, it's a results-based business, so you live and die on your own ability, basically, you know. So, yeah.
And I suppose then the kind of in your day-to-day, kind of two questions. What would be kind of your day-to-day work that kind of comes across your desk, and the second one then the kind of biggest challenges I suppose you'd face day-to-day, or the biggest challenges you faced in your career?
Well, all criminal law starts in the district court, and most of it stays there. The jurisdiction of the district court is 2 years. That's the maximum jurisdiction on multiple charges. On any one charge, the maximum jurisdiction is 12 months. Now it varies, and of course some charges carry less than that, you know. But that's the maximum jurisdiction. So most criminal law stays there, okay, and most criminal cases stay there. But the small amount then go forward to the Circuit Criminal Court, and then we have a bit of an anomaly in our system whereby two types of cases basically go to what's called the Central Criminal Court. So instead of going district, circuit, whatever, high, supreme, okay, we go district, circuit, central, which is the High Court sitting as criminal court. But then the Circuit Court and the Central Criminal Court, if you're appealing from those, they both go to the same place, the Court of Criminal Appeal. So it's a bit of an anomaly that we have this court out here, the Central Criminal Court. It's only for two basic charges, murder or rape. They should really be in the circuit. You know, it should be a linear system. There is no need for this. It was a historic anomaly that occurred back along where they thought murder was such a serious matter that it should have its own. It should be in the High Court, you know. So Central Criminal Court is what the High Court is as a criminal court. And then later on, people thought rape should be put in there, and so it was. The jurisdiction of the Circuit Criminal Court is great as the Central Criminal Court. You can get life for serious drug charges in the Circuit Criminal Court. The District Court, mainly what we see is we see everything, as I said, and the more serious ones then go forward. We know where murder and manslaughter go. Serious assaults, serious drug cases with high amounts of drugs, more than a couple of thousand, they go to the Circuit Criminal. Dangerous driving, causing death, serious road traffic matters like that, where there's serious injury or death involved, they would go to Circuit Criminal Court. Ordinary, if you like, if you can call them ordinary assaults, Section 2 assaults, which is the lesser assault, sometimes Section 3 assaults, which is assault causing harm, but if there's no major sequelae, no major injuries, they might keep them in the District Court. Shoplifting.
that
comes. I mean, every single day I will have a couple of people up to shoplifting, and then the one that really I'd say is the most prevalent is public order. Public order legislation came in here in 1994. Before that, it was breach of the peace, and it was kind of common law. So 1994, they brought in Public Order Act, and Section 4 is being drunk and a nuisance yourself. That just carries a fine. Section 6, though, being drunk and then telling the guard to where to go or telling people where to go, threatening and abusive, that can get you jail. Refusing to leave if a guard tells you, that can get you jail. Obstructing a guard, that can get you jail. So they would be the vast majority of the cases that go through our courts. All those public order ones I just talked about, that would be the main work in the district court. Thefts and drugs, smaller drug cases. Then if it's more serious, as I said, the DPP has first call on it. The Director of Public Prosecution is whether to send it forward. And then the judge, our judges usually follow the DPP. Some very independent-minded judges might differ, but most cases, most judges who are not out to make a name for themselves or trying to cause major upsets, they will follow the DPP. The DPP will usually be sensible enough about sending more serious cases forward and keeping cases that should be kept in the district court.
Yeah, I know you kind of mentioned previous common law, and I know a lot. Because traditionally we would have had a very low rate of, I suppose, serious crime in Ireland, and we'd rely a lot on maybe other jurisdictions and the kind of common law that side. Do you kind of find that trend is shifting a bit?
Oh, that's completely changed.
Yeah.
Most of our authorities, all of our authorities are Irish authorities, and our Supreme Court has laid down, major developments in recent years. I mean, Judge Hardiman was Lord of Mercy. He was a brilliant judge, and we had other judges back in the day. We had Brian Walsh, and we had Carol O'Donnell, who was president briefly, and these people set some great precedents for us.
Was it very challenging? Was it very challenging before you had kind of those precedents? Or?
When I started off first, it was kind of developing, and we were becoming more eager to embrace people's rights and protect people, more vulnerable people. Still is today. I mean, most of the people that we have in court have all sorts of difficulties. They have addiction difficulties, they have mental health difficulties, an awful lot of them. If you check what's the most common ailment in Ireland, probably in a lot of other countries, you'll find that the most common ailment is anxiety and depression. That's what people are on medication for. And you'll find that, like, vast majority of our clients, if I ask them, I always have questions I ask people, kind of set them on to questions, just to get their background. Like, the vast majority of them suffering from, all sorts of difficult, multi kind of health addiction problems. And a lot of them have had educational difficulties. A lot of them have been, haven't been given a fair whack starting off, and have been born into very difficult circumstances. And when we started being a bit more forgiving of people, We still get knee-jerk reaction stuff all the time, as you know, and we make bail harder for them when our prisons are already overcrowded. We lock up people who haven't even been found guilty. But by and large, since I've been in, and I've been in it a good bit now, we've been more and more protecting the vulnerable people. That's not to say that serious criminals don't deserve to get imprisoned. Of course they do. But we were imprisoning a lot of people who were, mentally, deficient and, had lots of difficulties that they couldn't articulate and weren't, properly, were being probably picked upon as well, It's easy to pick on these people, And so we've become more tolerant. You know that by the recent legislation with what's happened in other areas. We have become a bit more tolerant. But every now and again you do get this reaction where they're saying, there's criminals getting away with it. I mean, when you compare what white-collar crime is, doing and the amount of money it's stealing, the amount of lives it's wrecking compared to what our little petty criminals are doing, I mean, it's ridiculous, And we haven't got legislation that keeps up with technology. So, I'm always saying, like, don't go and rob an old lady of her handbag. Like, just do an online fraud, like,
massive growth in that.
Scam people on Dundee or whatever, and more than likely we won't get you, But we then seem to use the people that we do get that are we'll say not the brightest in a lot of cases. We do tend to pick on them then and scapegoat them as we're catching all the criminals and we're locking them all up and we're making sure they won't get bailed that easily,
Yeah, no,
not
definitely.
to say now, don't get me wrong, people who are serious danger to you, me, our wives, our mothers, whatever, our children, those people, there is a place for those people, and that is prison, and those people we have to be safeguarded from those people, but we are still locking up too many people that shouldn't be locked up. We've only very recently now, last year or two, we've only stopped locking up people who don't pay fines. I mean, what a waste that was, You get a fine, and it could be for anything, from television license, or it could be for something like public order or something. And you end up going to jail,
Yeah.
outrageous. Only recently now, as in the last year or two, we've just about preventing that now. We're giving people the option of doing community service, which of course is something that should be used a lot more. I'm always saying that, in every single case where a judge says I have an option, I'm always saying, but the person can repay their debt to society by doing service back to the community. Think of that option, and there's no reason why that should not be the option that you should be. There should be more emphasis on, And
do you think that kind of community service and that kind of, I suppose, looking at repaying society or maybe even rehabilitation is a lot more useful?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, than kind of the traditional, I suppose, throwing someone in jail and not looking at what they need.
It also can get people into a kind of a work ethic, They have to do work now instead of going to jail. If they opt to do that, which most of them will, then they find they have to get up at whatever time in the morning, and that they have a structure to their lives, and it might get them. And sometimes they get into work where they can get a lead to get more permanent work afterwards. No, they don't. It doesn't work out for everybody, but it's better than sending them straight to prison and for minor offences now, where they're not a danger to us.
Yeah, and they have a criminal record then.
And we've got to think about other things as well, like tagging and that kind of stuff, rather than be locking people up.
Yeah.
We probably should have more open prisons as well for people again, who are not a danger to other people and who will have a very hard time in prison.
Yeah, no, I think they're all very good points. And I know you're kind of touching it. You worked in Dublin for a while and then came back down to Cork. And for you, what would you kind of see as the main differences, or kind of advantages or disadvantages, or why did you choose to go work in Cork yourself, I suppose, over Dublin?
Well, I choose to work in Cork because the savage loves his native heath, basically. So when you're from Cork, you always want to go back to Cork, But I was very tempted to stay in Dublin because it was a great office I was working in, and the advantage of Dublin, as I touched on earlier, I think, is that much bigger population there for people who are interested in doing criminal law, much greater opportunities. Now, they also had, well, we have it now as well, they have a CCJ building, Court of Criminal Justice, where all the criminal courts are. Whereas in Cork, well, they had that before us. We were running toing and froing. Our circuit court was sitting in Washington Street, and our district court was in Anglesey Street. And for someone like me, that's a sole practitioner. This was very, very stressful. So we now have a CCJ building ourselves, so the advantages from that point of view that Dublin had over us are gone, because that building is so well designed now that we can have central criminal courts sitting there. We can have murder trials and rape trials there. Whereas before they all had to go to Dublin. Yeah. So the opportunities in Cork are kind of growing a lot, particularly from when you started. You're kind of seeing that there is way more opportunities to practice and kind of work. In and
Cork.
It's easier now. They put it all in one place for us.
Yeah, and I suppose one kind of question people are probably getting a lot, and you're probably getting a lot, kind of around the pandemic and how that's impacted your work and impacted the courts and that kind of side. How have you found that?
It didn't impact on us to a huge extent because our district court judges in Cork kept going pretty much as normal. Now we did have, obviously, numbers had to be controlled coming in, but we've huge spaces down there, huge height roofs and huge corridors, so we were able to control that. And then people were kept outside the front gate as well for a while, and they brought them in by degrees, but. So it didn't really affect us. Okay, we all had to get more like you guys and get on top of Zoom technology and that kind of stuff. So we had Zoom visits to even with our counsel to prisoners. We had Zoom calls to clients. But by and large, we got through it. We got through it easily enough. We already have video link technology in the courts. In the courts, and we've had that in Cork since that building was completed. That new building we have in the last couple of years. So anybody who's a prisoner now, if their case isn't being finalised, if it's just in for DPP directions or in for another process in the whole, one of the stages in the ongoing case, then and it's not going to be finalised on any given day, and yet that person is in prison and his case is up. We now do that by video link. The only time they're required for to be present in court is if they're finalising the case, or if, for example, they're in the district court and they're being sent forward to the circuit court. They're brought down so that the book of evidence can be served on them.
Yeah.
Or if they want to do a signed plea, you can go forward to circuit court on a signed plea. So if you're sent forward to this thing, it's too serious to be dealt with in district court, we're sending you forward to circuit court, you can go forward on a signed plea. Huge advantage going forward on a signed plea, and we have to really advise our clients of it now, because the Court of Criminal Appeal has said you must get I think it's a third off of what's called the headline sentence to for someone. And it makes a lot of sense all around. Victims know that they don't have to come to court and give evidence from an early stage. prosecution knows they don't have to go to the trouble of getting a book of evidence together with all that entails, which is a lot of work, a lot of hours, for them, So the Court of Criminal Appeal, quite rightly, has said you have to be given a huge. I'm always very careful now when people are sent forward saying, look, if you were thinking of pleading guilty, you should do it now at this stage and go forward on a signed plea, because you will get a lot lesser. You have to get a lot lesser sentence,
And I suppose you kind of touched on it there, that you're very much with people's livelihoods, with people's lives are kind of on the line in a lot of the work you do. Do you kind of find that challenging yourself, knowing that kind of pressure?
You're always conscious, yeah. You're always conscious that, like, this is somebody's, if this goes badly today, and if it goes badly because of you, because of something you've done wrong or something you've not seen, you're very conscious of it, because they'll go to prison, and you might say, oh, well, sure, they're used to it. No, nobody's used to prison. Nobody likes going to prison. People who've even been there before, they don't like going back. And I've been up there visiting many times, and I wouldn't like to be on the other side, not for 1 second,
And you kind of have to put, when kind of some very challenging cases might come up and some very, very difficult issues, would you kind of have to put your emotions aside with a lot of those and very much focus it at work?
You find, like in all jobs, you just focus on that. It's not that you don't have empathy. Of course, you always have empathy for victims, and if you see horrific pictures of people who've been murdered or assaulted or whatever, I mean, of course you're human. You don't lose any empathy there, but you're so focused on your own job and making sure you do the proper job, Now, what you don't do is you don't tell the person like what they're going to do. If they say to you, should I plead guilty or not guilty? No, I wasn't there. I can only go what evidence is here and what you're saying. You have to tell me whether you're pleading guilty or not guilty. But obviously, if you're going to be pleading guilty, you should plead guilty at the earliest opportunity. Yeah. You will find, if you go over to our district court, that the vast majority of cases are pleaded, out early on,
Yeah. I suppose just touching on it, and we kind of spoke about a lot of the big legal developments that have impacted on a lot of your work, and what kind of has been the most significant for you in terms of changes in the law and in legislation that has really changed what you're actually doing now?
Yeah, when I started off first, if you were sent forward on indictment to the Circuit Court or to the Central Criminal Court, you got what's called a book of evidence served on you. That was all the evidence that the state were going to produce, well, pretty much all. They could always add on to that. But in the district court, you didn't get anything. So you were fighting a case like with, I was going to say one hand tied behind your back, it was actually both hands tied behind your back. And that was when I started first. It was unbelievable. I mean, looking back on it, it sounds barbaric. Yeah. Then along came Gary Doyle. And so Gary Doyle brought a case to the courts, to the higher courts, saying that he should be entitled to get his statements of evidence the same way you get them if you're being sent forward in an indictment. This was a case waiting to happen for quite a while now. Yeah. So that was a game changer. So now when we're in court and if somebody's up on a charge, unless it's very minor that you don't need to get, we can get a précis, but if it's something that you really need to look into, you'll say, I want a Gary Doyle order. A Gary Doyle order is an order for disclosure. So that was the big game changer when I started. The other big game changer would have been, I was looking at this earlier, DNA, I think, was a significant development, because not so much from a point of view of getting people convicted, but acquitting people. We know now that's very important. And CCTV more and more has played a big role. Yeah. Again, as well as convicting people, acquitting people as well. And the CCTV quality has been getting better and better. I'm a great believer in CCTV. I know we've civil liberties people that start giving out about, but if you've nothing to hide, well, why should you be worried about being, it's there for the greater protection of all of us.
The dash cams are kind of seen on cars are coming in a lot as well.
Yeah. Again, because witnesses, to no fault of their own, are very unreliable. Yeah. This is far more reliable,
Yeah, there's no denying what's there in the footage.
Video evidence, Yeah, we can all look at it. We're not depending on people's memories, which the best will in the world are flawed.
Yeah. I know there's been a lot of calls recently for the introduction of a stalking offence. Do you kind of view any challenges in this, or? Sorry,
just before we leave that one. Sorry, the other two big changes that have occurred in relatively recent times, and again in my time, one is very recent. One was the right to have your solicitor present when you're being interviewed in the Garda station. Okay, that's now established as a core right. Okay, it wasn't before. You could speak to them, or you could see them beforehand, or you could see them whatever in between it. They could stop it. But now the person is entitled to have me present during his interview, and her interview. And if they're on legal aid, there'll be legal aid funded for that, okay? Yeah. So that and before that, and again, it was the person who was the main mover behind it was the late the late Supreme Court Judge, Judge Hardiman, recording of interviews of people. When I started off first, guards with statements purportedly, made by people and signed by people, and or they refused to sign. Yeah. Now, we used to have voir dire, trials within trials, saying these are inadmissible, and it used to take up an awful lot of court time. So now they're recorded. If they're not recorded, they feel they're not admissible. Yeah. So they are the main changes. Sorry, and you then asked me.
Yeah. No, they're very good, and it's kind of crazy to think some of them changes that they took so long, particularly even the
when I think back in it now, I'm going, oh man, that was so primitive before. Yeah. It makes so much sense that these are in place. For everybody's protection, because I mean, people will accuse guards of beating them up as well, and wrongly, Whereas it's recorded, there you go.
No one can lie there. So I was kind of mentioning there's been a lot of calls recently for the introduction of stalking as a criminal offence, and it was one that was kind of a lot of people felt was missed in the recent changes. Do you kind of view any challenges in that coming in, or
stalking
thoughts?
And harassment in general? These are rare enough. Now they may be on the increase, but they are rare enough. But there is no reason why you can't have two distinct offences. Yeah, I know that they prosecute this what we would call stalking as harassment. But the Law Reform Commission, I think in 2016, said that stalking should be a separate offence of its own. I think in the UK carries 10 years. Harassment here carries 7 years. But it's obviously a distinct offence, and of course there's no reason why it shouldn't be brought in. And if you read through the Law Reform Commission, generally what they recommend are usually really, really, really on the ball kind of ideas, and they bring a lot of older legislation up to date. They do it in all areas, They do it in my old topic that I did starting off for a short while, conveyancing. One should read them. One should read what they recommend, because generally it follows. It takes a while, but it generally follows. And
I suppose in kind of looking at the future of criminal law and any changes you see coming down the road, or any changes you'd like to see, because we kind of spoke about what's happened and the very significant changes. What ones do you think we're still missing, or maybe you'd like to see kind of coming down in the next few years?
I can't see too much now. I think we're doing pretty good. We've brought in a lot of improvements, and we've safeguarded people, and we're also safeguarding victims. It works both ways. I think, and every time I do a jury trial, I always feel that it's a very fair system. Like, there's 12 people. They decide. They're not basing it on things except common sense and what they've heard in court. I don't want to see that changing. It was a bit difficult before when you used to need 12 people unanimous. Now you can go 10-2 or 11-1. They're told after 2 hours that you can go. You can now go. Majority. But they try first to get 12. I think it's a great system. I think it's lasted hundreds of years, and I don't see any reason to change it. Technology will probably mean there'll be a lot more virtual courts, and not having to transport prisoners from prisons, and all that entails. Prisoners don't like it either. I mean, imagine if you were one of those giant sardine tins now being brought from Wheatfield Prison down to Cork Court, which could happen. I mean, it must be horrific. So there will be more of that in our courts now. In our modern court in Anglesey Street. In the lobby area of most of the courtrooms, there is a little kind of hidden room, and when you go in there, we have access to it. You have a direct phone link to the prisons, so you can talk to somebody on the phone. If they're going to be on the video link in court, you can talk to them on the phone. Now that needs to be a video link. It's very old-fashioned, and we have great difficulty with it. That's a bugbear for all of us. That kind of technology is going to help that, But our basic criminal justice system, I think, works really well, and I wouldn't change it. And the jury system works well, and I've been following the jury system now for a long time, and I haven't seen anything fairer than that.
Yeah. I suppose just before we wrap up, have you any kind of general piece of advice, or just say there's a student who might be very interested in criminal law, or think they might pursue it, or they might want to talk to you and ask you any questions, any kind of bits of advice to come on there?
Yeah, I'll give you the advice. I'll give them all the advice that Daniel Webster, famous lawyer in the States back in the 1800s, and a politician, you might have heard of him, and what he came up with the famous saying that when some younger person was talking about going to the bar or doing law, and they said, but it's already overcrowded. This was in the 1800s in the US, he said, there's always room at the top. So if you're really determined to do it, do it.
Yeah.
And you have a lot more access now, because you can come into the courts and you can, as I said, trail people like me and all the other guys that are and ladies that are inside there, you know, and we're only too delighted to bring people around, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, go for it if it's what you want to do, you know.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to get in touch with you, they can through us or
Oh
through
yeah,
yourself
absolutely,
or anything
yeah,
like that.
yeah. I'd say if you just Google it, you'll get my name and number anyway, you know. So yeah,
That's great.
certainly, it's really, yeah, I have no difficulty bringing anybody in. We've been doing it for years, and we've been even doing it now again, even though the pandemic stopped it initially. We're doing it again now, you know. So no difficulty whatsoever. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks a million, Dermot.
Pleasure.
Before we wrap up, I'd like to say a massive thanks to Dermot Kelleher for taking the time to talk to me here today, and again thanks to the Southern Law Association for sponsoring this series. And yeah, stay tuned for more episodes coming your way. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Dermot or myself. Thank you. Thanks, Dermot.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Bailey.
Hear from you. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, if that's what you're into, and our website, ucclawsociety.com. If you ever want to come on the show, that's absolutely no problem at all. Do get in touch with us though, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks so much.